Speaker.
Sue Moroney.
Mr Speaker, the Kiwi dream is not too much to ask. I think the National Party have forgotten about the basic needs of New Zealanders. Somewhere safe to live. Hopefully, a place that you can call home, that you can own. That's not too much to ask. A chance to have security for the people we love. A chance to enjoy the outdoors and the environment that we care about. A job, a decent, secure job that gives us the time, the money and the safety to lead a fulfilling life with those who we care about. It's a simple concept, the Kiwi dream. But for an increasing number of New Zealanders, it is getting completely outside of their reach under this national government. And I was hoping to hear something inspirational from the Prime Minister's statement that might change that situation around. But a couple of weeks after the Prime Minister stood up and gave his statement, I can't name one exciting thing that he said, and I don't think any New Zealander can. What was the transformational thing that the Prime Minister came out with in his speech that will improve people's lives? Because that's what we're charged with. We're charged with improving people's lives, not handing out the same old misery that is stopping thousands of New Zealand families and children from achieving that simple Kiwi dream. That's what we're here to try and secure. It's out of reach for far too many New Zealanders under this government. My generation of parents, we are facing the sad situation of being the first generation ever to look at our children and know that they are going to be worse off than we were, that they're going to be worse off. That hasn't happened before. I think all parents aspire to know that their children's lives are going to be better than theirs were. But we're facing down the barrel of being the first generation where we won't be able to look our children in the eye and say that, because they face increasing housing costs. Their chances of actually owning their own home are becoming a distant memory. They face increasing debt for everything that they're engaged with, for their education, for just simply being allowed to live on this planet and participate in life in New Zealand. They are under growing amounts of debt. And the life expectation of the generation below us is below the life expectation for my generation. That is a dreadful situation for any parent to have to contemplate. And our children face increasingly insecure jobs. That's what they're facing under this national government. And it's only the Labour Party that is concerned enough about that prospect that we are doing the hard work and the thinking and the policy making around what the future of the workforce needs to look like to actually make it more secure for people, to ensure that the workforce and the labour market works for people. Because I listened to that sad contribution from the last couple of National MPs, and the one, Todd Muller, who's just resumed his seat, he said that our entire success is going to be measured on how connected we are to the world. No, Mr Muller, our success will be rated on how people's lives are, because we have an economy to serve the people, not the people to serve the economy. And they've got it completely the wrong way around. And that's what I think was at the basis of the Prime Minister's statement that was so disappointing and didn't bring forward any of the inspiration, any of the vision that New Zealanders are desperately crying out for. So under National, the Kiwi dream is slipping away. They're too distracted on working out how to get rid of our flag, for goodness sake. They're distracted on how to get rid of our flag. They had a crisis meeting about it, Mr Speaker. A crisis meeting on how to get rid of the national flag, when the crisis meeting they should have been having was how to lift the increasing number of children out of poverty that are slipping into poverty under their reign. That should have been what the crisis meeting was about, not about getting rid of our flag. So they've completely got their priorities upside down. Mr Speaker, on this side of the House, we are connected to the Kiwi dream and we are determined to deliver that. And I want to talk about a few aspects that we're taking charge of. Extending paid parental leave. If the Kiwi dream starts anywhere, it starts in those first early months and days of child's life. And getting that right, getting the support, getting the security, getting the attachment between parent and baby, there should be no greater priority than that, because that is where the Kiwi dream starts. And if it goes wrong in those early months, what all the research and evidence tells us is that we, as taxpayers, will pay for that over and over and over again. Because when that child can't learn, when that child ends up in hospital, when that child's not going to school through their health problems, when that child is disconnected from their caregiver, from their parent, then we all pay over and over again for the bad outcomes of that. On this side of the House, and with the support of other wise parties, what we know is that this sort of investment is the type of thing that really the Prime Minister should have been talking about. He should have been agreeing to extend paid parental leave to 26. But was he doing that? No, instead he's talking about putting a veto on it, to go against the will of this Parliament and to go against the will of the majority of New Zealanders to put a stop to getting the start to the Kiwi dream. That's what the Prime Minister's focused on, and not actually dealing with the issues that matter to New Zealanders at all. Decent jobs. That's what this side of the House is focused on, because we know that having a decent job is fundamental to being able to secure the rest of the Kiwi dream. It's fundamental to that. But under this government, 0-hour contracts. That's what's been going on. It's been going on where people have to put their lives on hold to sit and wait for a phone call that may never come, to give them a little bit of extra money so that they can actually put food on the table. For far too many of our families, those jobs mean that not only can they not participate in their community, but they also cannot do the basic thing of putting food on the table. We are a food-producing nation, and 27% of our children live in poverty. Too many of our children go to school hungry in a food-producing nation. How can we get it so wrong? How can that be? Did the Prime Minister address that at all in his statement? Not one measure to reduce child poverty. Not one measure to secure decent jobs. Not one measure that actually deals with the day-to-day pressures that New Zealand families are facing, and it's very, very disappointing. Another part of a decent job is the good old Kiwi adage that you get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. There was never a rider put on that I've ever heard that says, oh, only if you're a certain gender, or only if you're a certain race. What I'm talking about is equal pay. We need to urgently address equal pay as well. And this government can't even talk about equal pay. It talks about instead getting women to go off and do jobs traditionally done by men, and that seems to be their only idea that they've got in this space. Well, it's not acceptable and it needs addressing. In my final part of the speech, Mr Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about transport and its role with the Kiwi dream, because I can tell you, Mr Speaker, that sitting on the Auckland motorway for hours on end is not part of the Kiwi dream, and that government has presided over increasing volumes on the Auckland motorway without people getting anywhere. They've spent $2.3 billion on the Waikato Expressway, and that was money, funding set aside by a Labour government to do exactly that. So we agree with the Waikato Expressway, but what they've managed to do is they have managed to squander that $2.3 billion, because it now takes longer than ever to get from central Hamilton to central Auckland. It now takes longer than ever. It used to take an hour and a half. Now, Hamiltonians put aside 3 hours to get from central Hamilton to central Auckland. And that's after the government has spent $2.3 billion on the Waikato Expressway. Why? Because they didn't do the public transport parts that needed to go alongside that to make it work. They have ignored the needs for public transport in Auckland, and now what we're doing with the Waikato Expressway is we're feeding a greater volume of traffic faster to get to the Great Southern Car Park and sit there for longer. That's what the national government's managed to achieve. It's not good for productivity. It's not good for family life, because now we've got, because of their housing crisis that they failed to fix in Auckland, we've got people moving to Hamilton, living there, but returning to their jobs every day in Auckland, going on that motorway, sitting there for hours on end, doing a full day's work, doing it again on the other end, becoming unsafe on the roads, getting home stressed with their families. That's not the Kiwi dream. It's not working under this government.